Hey everybody, today I am reviewing Tom on the Farm, and this is a French/Canadian film directed by Xavier Dolan. Xavier Dolan is quite a prolific and precocious artist, and his career has been compared to that of Orson Welles, not only because he stars in, writes, and directs the majority of his films, but because he is only 26 years old, and several of his films have already received international and critical acclaim. I love people like that. And yet I'm also disgusted by people like that because I'm 25 and I haven't done shit. But with this film, it seems like he's starting to take more and more risks as a director, which I think is fantastic. I think the younger you are, the more you really have time to experiment and figure out what your style is, and I think it'll help you kind of have perspective in the long run. And here he seems to be taking a lot of different genres and blending them together and try to make them more fresh. And the result is quite interesting. Tom on the Farm is about a guy named Tom, and Tom is played by Xavier Dolan himself, and he's on a farm. But specifically, Tom is actually attending a funeral on the farm for his boyfriend, ex-boyfriend. Tom meets his deceased boyfriend's family, but to his surprise, nobody even knows who Tom is, or that he was romantically involved with said boyfriend. No one even knew that the boyfriend was gay. The family itself is very kind of odd, and you start to see that unfold as the film progresses. But the brother, Francis, figures out who Tom is early on, and he warns him, he tells him, look, you cannot tell anybody that you and my brother were seeing each other, or else it will destroy the reputation of this family. Francis is a very erratic character, and he starts to physically and mentally abuse Tom throughout, and he starts to use him in this kind of twisted mind game. And at first, while I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, well, why doesn't Tom just leave? I mean, if somebody were abusing me in that manner, I would have been like, fuck this, I'm out. It just seems like an obvious thing to do. It's like, you know, when you're watching those dumb horror movies and you see the dumb cheerleader walking into the barn and you're like, no, don't go in the barn, but you know they're gonna do it anyway. But what you learn really quickly is that you can't look at this film in terms of logistics. It's trying to do something a little bit different. It's not reality. To me, this is very much a psychological film, a thriller in some respects, that has a lot of very unique elements that are woven in. You can see a lot of horror elements and psychological thriller elements from other film directors that are quite famous. I mean, there are definitely moments where you're like, oh, well, that's a moment that's kind of an homage to Hitchcock. I also saw Roman Polanski in there a little bit. A lot of the time, the film really borders on parody, and I think that Dolan just likes campiness in his films. That's something he's a fan of. And I mean, even though the film has a very like dismal, dark tone to it, there are a lot of moments that are quite funny, and I think a lot of it just comes from the absurdity of the characters. The structure of the scenes are very unusual and quite unexpected. They have kind of a manic, impulsive feel to them, and you'll see a scene kind of build very slowly. It's kind of quiet and methodical, very slow build, and then just out of nowhere, they'll just have this real jolt of impact. And I was really intrigued by that, because it's something that we don't see very often, because again, it's kind of a fresh take on all of these genres, but it really did reflect that kind of manic feeling inside the characters. This is a study of certain human behaviors. It's a film that is about inner secrets and desires that we have that often twist and distort into other emotions. A lot of time when people have shame or repression, whether it's, you know, sexuality or emotions, anything, you can often become violent and very irrational. You definitely see this in the characters. I think Francis most of all, though. You can tell that he is very unsure of his sexuality and his feelings, and he wants to explore the certain avenues, but because of the world that he's grown up in and the reputation that he's created for himself, he won't do it, and that's kind of caused him to become very tense and very angry. And then you have Tom himself, who is very fascinating just to look at. Xavier has a very compelling quality as an actor. He looks like one of those French models on like a perfume ad that's black and white, and he's, you know, got the pout. But there's a lot more to him than that. I think that he is a lot like Francis. He's very alone and unsure of himself as well, and may also be very confused emotionally and even sexually, and that has caused him to kind of almost enjoy being the pawn in this scheme. And you see it in his eyes. I mean, you know, there's so much sadness that you can feel in him, but at the same time, there's something in his eyes that kind of is almost like a masochism sort of thing, and there is a masochistic quality to the film. However, I do think that there were certain areas of the film or certain characters that I felt could have been explored more. For instance, the character of the mother to me was one of the most fascinating and somebody that I wanted to learn from more and more as the film went on. But you don't really see much of her. I mean, there are certain moments that really give strong indications of who she is and hints here and there, but as a viewer, I wanted more. I felt like her character could have been more fleshed out. And I'm also not sure what I think about the ending. It's one of those things that to me, it didn't really have as much of a payoff as I think that the film deserved. It didn't really reach a certain conclusion that went along with the way that the film built. It just kind of seemed to taper off. Part of me thinks that there's something to the subtlety of the way the film ended that is part of the power of it. And then another part of me feels like there was a lot more there that could have been explored. But I think that if I saw this film again, I may have a different reaction. Who knows? This is just my opinion based on an initial viewing. But I do think that this film is worth watching. I think Xavier Dolan is such a talent and somebody that is becoming really creating a statement and a style in the indie world, and he has been for several years. And again, I love the fact that he's really pushing himself and really doing things that maybe other people may not expect. And that is, to me, what's important. Does it always pay off? Not necessarily, but I think that in the long run, it will be worthwhile. But anyway, that is my review. Thank you all for listening. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, the link is below, and you can also like my Facebook page and the link below that. Catch you next time.